Alright everyone, it is Dokkan time again, and today's how to build video is going to be for the new free-to-play Intelligence Kid Vegeta. Now, this Kid Vegeta used to be this SR right here. Now, if you did not acquire him before today's update, then this version of the card is potentially unable to be acquired moving forward. Mostly due to the fact that the whole event itself updated, but it does look like it is still there on stage 3. So thankfully, you can still get the SR. I kind of panicked yesterday, so I apologize if you saw the post about that. But either way, we now have a UR version of this unit. At the current time of recording, I don't foresee a EZA early. It is very possible that an EZA won't happen for quite a bit of time. They've been kind of holding off on the EZAs right away for these units, so I think it's okay to be posting this right now. And in all given honesty, even if this unit got an EZA like randomly within the next 6 months, I don't think I would change my build choices here. I think he's going to be pretty much the same regardless of how they Extreme Z awaken him in the future. But anyways, I'm sorry for rambling there. If you're new to the channel, my name's Joe Saiyan. I am a bald Saiyan man that makes Dragon Ball content and primarily Dokkan Battle hidden potential build videos. Basically, I tell you how to utilize the unit to best of its abilities, and what skills to give it, and what teams and roles to acquire of it. But yeah, if that sounds good to you, go ahead and Gallic gun the like and subscribe button, and we're just going to go ahead and jump right in. So we're going to go through the breakdown first, then we'll go through defense, and then build suggestions and role tips. So as far as the breakdown goes here with general leaders options, he's got quite a few random 200% options. I feel like a couple of these could be getting EZAs potentially soon. I do think it's entirely possible Raditz will see one very soon. This AGL Frieza was pretty much DOA on arrival. The Saiyan Day Vegeta also could potentially see one in the near future. He is only actually 170% on the Daima physical Vegetas. He's not 220 there. In fact, his only 220 option is actually the AGL Gogeta team. That is going to be his only 220 option. These other 220 characters you see are only under 170% of attack and defense. So do keep that in mind. Scouter Vegeta does exist. He is a thing for very select bit of content, so you could definitely use him as a leader. That actually would probably be one of his best options. This unit is a little finicky into the fact that I'm not really entirely sure what area of content you should be using him in. This is a character that probably needed his awakening, like, I don't know, 5 years ago. And, I mean, yeah, you'll see once we get into it. So his leader skill is pretty much nothing. Successors category, key plus 3 HP attack and defense 50%, or AGL int and Fizz types key plus 2 and HP attack and defense plus 30%. Basically a worthless leader skill in my opinion. Super attack is greatly raising attack and defense for 1 turn, and he has a 50% chance to stun. So I do actually like this part right here. The stun capability does help out in specific areas of content, so I do think it can be useful. Key plus 2 attack and defense 200%. When facing 2 or more enemies, attack and defense of 120 permanently. So this does mean that the second that you do fight a 2 or more enemies, this should stay. So even if it went down from 2 to 1, this should be a permanent boost right here. And chance of performing a critical hit and chance of evading enemies attack plus 20%. Once again, should be a permanent boost so long as you actually fight 2 or more enemies at one time. Now, this is the part that would not be a permanent and would only apply when you are fighting 2 or more enemies. Space Traveling Warriors or Gifted Warriors category allies attack and defense of 20% for 2 turns. Off-rotational support is very rare, but has been becoming a nice addition to teams. This guy is basically a support unit at the end of the day. But it's unfortunate that this is tied to specifically when only fighting 2 or more enemies. So I'm not really entirely sure when you could even abuse this. Now, when facing 3 or more enemies, attack and defense of 130. Once again, this is a permanent boost so long as you actually fight 3 at once. Now, chance of performing a critical hit and chance of evading enemies attack plus 30% as well will be permanent. But as long as you're facing 3 or more enemies, space traveling warriors or gifted warriors, category allies, attack and defense 30% for 3 turns. Very nice, super insane actually that it's for a 3-turn buff. That's like Glorio level right there, meaning that even if if you float him, basically what happens is that if you don't float him, when you're fighting 3 or more enemies, this will proc and it will stay for that turn, the next turn, and the turn that he actually comes back. So potentially you can actually get a huge increase of support here from this guy if you're still fighting 3 or more enemies by the time that this kid Vegeta comes rolling back on his next rotation. So turn 1 if you're fighting 3 enemies, and then turn 3 if you're fighting 3 enemies still again, this will be right on top of it, meaning that this ends up being a 60% boost in total. And then this would also proc again, so it'd be just a 80% boost. So he does have a potential huge increase for that turn that he comes back. But otherwise, a 50% support for off rotation, though, is pretty crazy. So long as you're fighting 3 or more enemies. Now, when there's another ally whose name includes Vegeta attacking in the same turn, defense plus 200% and chance of evading enemies' attack plus 20%. When receiving an attack specifically. Now, when there are no other allies whose name include Vegeta attacking in the same turn, attack plus 200% and chance of performing a critical hit plus 20% when attacking. So basically, he has a higher attack and crit chance when there's no other Vegeta on the attacking rotation, and then he has a higher defensive ability when there is a Vegeta attacking on the same rotation. Now, when attacking with 12 or more key attack and defense of 200%, and then have 50% chance of launching 2 additional super attacks. Honestly, he's actually pretty nice. He's pretty interesting. The only thing that really throws me off and bugs me is this 3 or more enemy thing. The good news is that the quote-unquote important part of the passive stays, which would be the chance of performing a crit and dodge chance on both of these parts. Basically, as long as you start the fight off fighting 3 or more enemies, he automatically has a 50% chance to crit and 50% chance to dodge, no matter what. That's pretty nice. I think that's pretty crucial in all honesty. And then as long as you have a Vegeta on the rotation, you actually have a 70% chance to dodge, which is pretty dang nice. 70% dodge chance with a Vegeta on the rotation, so long as you went into a fight and started fighting 3 or more enemies at one time to activate those. But after that, I think that's when you he loses steam. Like if you are not consistently fighting 3 or more enemies and you don't keep these supportive parts of his passive up, he doesn't really have much of a usage other than to potentially stun the enemy. He is still pretty much a supportive type unit at the end of the day for that stun and then this off rotational support here. But there's just so very few areas of content that you could utilize him in. But if there is any that he could be thrown into, he's going to be very nice. Now, Link skills are Saiyan Warrior Race, Prodigies, Saiyan Lineage, Royal Lineage, Thirst for Conquest, Prepare for Battle, and Shattering the Limit. Very odd kind of amount of links here. And as you'll see for a lot of his partners, he's primarily just going to be linking up with other Vegetas. Daima Vegeta being his most recent unit that he could be potentially linked up with, just not having the Thirst for Conquest, which does lose a little bit of defense here, but this is still one of the best link partners for a free-to-play team that I think you could utilize. Otherwise, there's not too much here. I mean, you do have the Saiyan Day Vegeta here, and then Scatter Vegeta, of course, are both solid options, but all of these units are basically not a part of the meta. So please do not assume that you can just take this unit into meta content and it'll be a-okay. I do not think that it's going to go anywhere if you try to take him into any meta relevant content. I will say, spoilers, his defense is actually pretty good. So let's just actually go ahead and go take a look at his defense numbers. So these defense numbers are compliments of Harvard over on Twitter, and I would say they're not too bad, actually, specifically when fighting multiple enemies. Now, when he's just receiving an attack, not fighting 2 or more enemies, he's only sitting at about a 800k defense, 1.1 million defense on an additional, and then 1.5 on a triple. I don't think it's very likely you'll ever get a quad super, so I wouldn't assume that that's going to happen on the regular, and just presume that at best you'll be getting a double, maybe a triple if you're lucky. So that's pretty low when receiving an attack. Now, when he's fighting 2 or more enemies, we actually go up to a pretty decent amount of numbers here. We go up from the 1.1 to a 1.7, and if he triples, he hits 2 million defense and 2.5 million defense if he magically quads. Once again, I don't think that's going to be the average. Remember, it's only 50% chances to additional super, but still pretty nice. Now, when you're fighting 3 or more enemies, it skyrockets up again, and on that double super, you get up to a 2.3, and then triple almost a 3 million, and then quad 3.5. With a standard 40% support, you can get up to a solid almost 2 million defense on super, 2.5 on an additional, 3 mil on triple, and almost nearing a 4 million, about 3.8 million quad super. Essentially what this means, if you really want to like break it down, is that for every extra enemy, this Vegeta gets close to between 500 to a million extra defense in total. It just really depends on how many additionals you get off there, but that's about how it rolls off. Because when you're just receiving an attack, if you quad supered, 1.7, and then if you're fighting 3 or more enemies in the same scenario, you'd be up to a 3.5 million. So I just don't think it'll be very likely that you'll be triple or quad supering. I think double supering is going to happen often, but triple is going to be a little bit luck oriented. I think he has pretty decent defense, but at the end of the day, I do believe he is just straight up a kind of dodge-centered support unit. Now, since he is primarily a free-to-play-esque unit, I don't think I would suggest throwing him into any other content other than free-to-play, content where you're fighting at least 2 to 3 enemies, and of course being on with gifted warriors or space traveling warriors, primarily for that support usage. If you're not on a team that can utilize this support right here, or a fight that can utilize the 2 to 3 more enemies, there's not really a reason to use him. And there's unfortunately just not a lot of content that does that anymore. Mostly it's always the old days of Super Battle Road and Extreme Super Battle Road. I mean, there is the Gogeta clones, of course, now, but that's not necessarily an event you really need to go into regularly, so it's a little weird placement for this unit to be arriving right now. But I think he could be used in quite a few random areas of content that could be usable. So now, before we get onto the build suggestions, I'd actually just like to show you where you can grind this Vegeta. You'll get him in the Dragon Ball Story tab for a Lone Warrior's Last Battle. This is primarily a Bardock event, but you'll be able to recruit Bardock and Vegeta here. Vegeta can be recruited in Stage 3, and then his Awakening medals can be recruited for Stage 4 for those medals specifically. I do believe the increased amount of drop rate for this will be Giant Form, and you'll also be able to acquire a support memory from the stage on special missions, which will increase low-class warrior, key +1, attack and defense at 10% for 2 turns. Pretty useless memory in my opinion, but I digress. Alright, so let's just get on to the build suggestions. I only have 2 suggestions for you because this is a free-to-play unit. There's no reason to give you a 55% build, 1 dupe, whatever. This is a unit where it's free-to-play. Therefore, that means you can freely grind the unit up as much as you so wish, so long as it drops for you. And so rainbow builds will be my only suggestions here, of course. So for the first rainbow build, I'm just going to go ahead and suggest full-on, straight-up full dodge. You don't have to pump in your best metals into this unit. This is just a highest example point. But yeah, full dodge, level 20 naturally, with all 3 of the equipment orbs being bronze, silver, and Gold being all dodge orbs. You can get up to a level 32 for a level 5 gold, level 5 silver, and level 2 dodge. Just to let y'all know, because people are going to be asking, there is no special equipment for this unit at the time of recording, so I will not be taking into consideration of any unless they drop later. It's very possible the event could get updated later at a random time and get new medals. I suggest you use whatever the highest level of the dodge or additional, whatever your preferred route was. I don't think defense orbs are going to help this unit too much unless they gave away like a defense orb for every single slot, which I just don't foresee happening. So, but the only other build suggestion I would suggest would just be a full additional build. The only reason I would suggest this one would be for the free-to-play level content, like Extreme Super Battle Road or Super Battle Road type events. You know, you could abuse the fact that he has a 50% chance to stun and increase your odds of getting a quad super. He does have a 70% chance to dodge built in, so technically speaking, there's not too much extra, you know, a level 30 dodge could help. I think the additional would help more in these scenarios, but to each their own. It is a free-to-play unit. You can make 2 different builds. That's what I'm going to do, honestly. I'm going to make a full additional build one and a full dodge build one. Yeah, there's not much else to say about his build suggestion, so I'm just going to go ahead and hop over to the role tips and kind of just end the video, because I don't think there's not much else to say. Role tips, he is a free-to-play unit, freely able to be grinded. He is primarily a support unit. Once again, if you're not utilizing him for this Space Traveling Warriors and Gifted Warriors off-turn rotational support, or at the very bare minimum of at least a 2 to 3 enemy fight where you can abuse a 70% chance to dodge specifically, then I'm not entirely sure what your purpose of bringing him is. Maybe you need to stun the enemy. Stun locking is a potential thing you could bring him for as well. 50% chance to stun, but he does have the triple built into his passive, so that is something you could think about. Either way, that's a supportive based set of mechanics in my personal opinion. Leader-wise, the AGL Gogeta is going to be the only one that's a 220% HP attack and defense for him. Otherwise, 200% leaders are the Saiyan Day Tech Super Saiyan Vegeta transforming unit, and then the AGL Scouter Vegeta. Otherwise, aim for Gifted Warriors and Special Traveling Warriors based teams and leaders. Partner-wise, honestly, the Scouter Vegeta is pretty solid. So is the transforming Tech Vegeta. He's also a very good option as well. I do believe he holds a good amount of links. Yeah, they share a lot of links together. It does help out both units, obviously, but at best, you're going to put this guy into slot 2, and honestly, this Vegeta right here, this Tech Vegeta, he can't be in slot 1. The AGL Vegeta, however, could in certain circumstances and decent amount of areas be in slot 1, so this could definitely be a very viable rotation you could have fun with. I think you can make a fun team with this, I really do. I think you can have a fun team rocking around with this as a partner. Otherwise, his primary link partners are all just going to be straight up Vegeta family ones, royal lineage, and all that. So, best slot position, honestly, is just slot 3. Aside from abusing his mechanics in slot 2 for very certain types of content, I just feel like he's kind of a throw-on unit onto the team. The only time I would throw him into slot 2 is if you are guaranteed going to be constantly fighting 3 or more enemies. As I said before, this is a 3-turn buff right here for his Space Traveling Warriors when fighting 3 or more enemies. So if you kept him on rotation, he would still retain this off-rotational buff from his previous appearance. So this would be the only time I would suggest keeping him on rotation. Otherwise, there's no reason not to just float him, in my opinion, unless you're attempting to stun lock an enemy and abuse the 50% chance to stun. So, but yeah, I think, yeah. I think that's going to be it. There's not too much else to say about this Vegeta. He's just he's pretty nice for a free-to-play unit, in all honesty. He's got some supportive abilities that can be utilized very well. So, Let me know what teams and specifically what kind of fights you're going to bring him into. Let me know if there's any bit of content that this unit was able to help you out in or you think would be good in. So, thank you for watching, everyone. I hope you have a good day and a good night.